Wait, let me try that. Let me try that evil laugh again. uh, Welcome to episode 38 of the Young Talk podcast. Now, what's happening is you don't know this because you're watching it all together, but this is actually 2 different days, okay? What we're going to watch today is a video on the Gen Z economy, and this is previously recorded. So I have to record this intro today when this episode comes out. But if you like this content and you enjoy this content, whatever we're calling this content, please just leave a like, share it with others, inform others that there's this type of content out there and it may be for them. So leave a like, subscribe, and share. That's all I ask. While we get into the topic of the Gen Z economy, I don't think there will be anything else in this episode other than that full discussion. Within this episode, we discuss the economy of not just Gen Z, but of society, how it's affecting us, what the future may look like, whether with AI as the main source of economy or something with the attention economy. The episode that we are watching is an interview from the Ezra Klein show, and I really recommend you watch the full video. The full video is very informative. The full video gives the full context of some of the subjects discussed in the episode here, but I wanted to cut it down and just give my take and my understanding of what the things that they're talking about, because all of it is very relevant. Given that last episode was OnlyFans, I wanted to bridge the gap between the economy discussion. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you have a good time. And please share this content the human way. Leverage your attention economy. Enjoy. I didn't make talking points.
The last few episodes of the show have been about attention, but about attention in terms of something else. If we're going to say attention is currency, if we're going to say it's power, well, what kind of currency is it?
Coin has been one of the most stable assets of this entire time, which I think says a lot about this entire time.
And the economy she is reporting on, the economy she is theorizing, an economy where attention drives capital as opposed to capital driving attention. Kyla is also the author of the book In This Economy, and you might have heard some of her different coinages like Vibe Session. She's a fascinating person to talk about this with. Kyla Scanlon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Here we go.
What is different about the economy that you live in, that you see, that you feel Gen Z is experiencing?
So she is what I'm going to say is safely to assume like a representation of. I feel like, I don't know. She knows the money.
And I've been talking to young people about how they experience the economy and how they think about their future. And so for them, it doesn't feel like there's that quote unquote path of predictable progress that like maybe their parents had or their grandparents had. And of course, every generation has had its own challenges. But for Gen Z, you don't have that predictable return on a college education anymore because of things like AI, because of how expensive college has gotten. You don't necessarily have a path toward buying a house that feels even remotely approachable. And, you know, if you think about retirement or just moving through a career path, that also feels really far away. Well, what does it look like if this path that everybody has followed has kind of disappeared, more or less?
Let me stay on the topic of the.
So that's pretty much the gist, right? Like if you want to break it down, I like the phrase. I like that phrase, predictable progress. Because that's not the fate. We talked about this on the previous episode where for boys, young boys growing up, the path isn't as simple as it used to be for them to go and get this job and then do this thing and have that thing. Things have changed. I like the term predictable progress because that's kind of the idea of what it was growing up for a certain period of time. No matter what it was you did, it was always this pathway of progress that you follow, whether it was going to school, getting a degree, getting a job, married, settle down, happy ending. Now we're at a time where that's very much being questioned for a lot of people, young and rising, because it's becoming extremely difficult to afford any of those things and even get into the places where those things are possible. I think that it's a multi-level issue. This is a good thing because this is a path towards a future where retirement doesn't have to be at the age of 80 or 90, you know? I don't want to have to be 90 and still working, you know?
So then what does it feel like if you can't see your way to a house, if you're not sure what the career paths are, if you're not sure what AI will do, like if you had to describe the emotional structure of the conversations you have with people on the tour, what are the dominant emotions?
I think there's a lot of worry. I mean, I think everybody picks up on this. Like, there's so many think pieces about, like, the kids are not all right? Like, there's a lot of nihilism, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety. And you sense that when you talk to people, because, like, they don't really know what to do, because this path that has sort of been instilled in you from the time that you were little, like go to college, graduate, buy a house, it's out of reach. And so when you can't get that, it feels far away, right? And so David Brooks was writing about the rejection generation that I think encapsulated it really well, because he was like,
I love all the different names they have for this generation. You know, like Jonathan Haidt has the anxious generation. What is this now? What is this one called? What is this? Where the fuck?
Rejection generation.
The rejection generation. Like, these are just terrible names for us. You know, they got baby boomers. You know, like we just. I guess the other one, the 1800s, people born in the 1800s, that's the forgotten generation. So I guess that's probably the worst, because it's like no one will ever remember them due to how time works. I don't know. I feel like ours are still worse. Like, we got to get a better name. The anxious and the rejected generation is not one that I think I want people in like the year 5000 to like coin. I'm like, we got to do something. We got to change it. They got to change it. Maybe Mondani, you know, he can put in like a legislator.
I think encapsulated it really well.
Whatever it is they do.
Because he was like, the Gen Zers are facing like rejection after rejection. Like, it's hard to get into college. And then when you graduate college, it's hard to get a job. And so I think that element of always being rejected from everything, or at least feeling like you're being rejected from everything, creates those elements of nihilism that show up in how Gen Zers might spend or save or invest. Essentially, there's like two ways that people seem to be responding to the uncertainty in the economy and the lack of a path of predictable progress. One path is tool belt pragmatism. So people going back to the trades, like becoming a plumber, electrician, great. Taking a path that isn't as speculative and uncertain as, you know, getting a bunch of debt and going to college. Other people are going a meme coin, gambling, sports betting type of route. And so you have these two ends of the extreme of risk. But both of those are responses to that path of get a college education, get a white collar job, and go off into the sunset, not really working anymore.
So is there a divergence in your view between the data on the economy that people in Gen Z are in and how they feel about it, or does it match?
I still think there are some elements of a disconnect, right? Like, people might be feeling a certain way because of social media that doesn't always match the data. But I think when we look at some data points, like the college wage premium, so basically how much more you make with a college degree than not, and that's eroded over the past couple of years. And so you're graduating with a college degree, very expensive. You're not making as much as you might expect. Housing is still quite expensive. Like, eventually those homes will pass on. But I think the median age to buy a house now is like 54 years old. And in the 1980s, I believe it was 34.
There's so much information. I feel like I'm not smart enough to do something with that. But I think I agree with it. You know, all this information is always out there too. Like, even before now, I remember even in high school where I learned about how houses become worth more over time. You know, you look at real estate now, and then they talk about this stuff too, where it was like the real estate market goes up and down, and housing and all this goofy things. And I'm like, none of this makes sense, is what I always thought. It never made sense. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is a problem, because I'm sure if I think this doesn't make sense, there's probably gonna be so many other people that's like me, like, this shit makes no sense. It's ridiculous. When like the whole idea of nihilism is real, because it's like, it's small things like that where it does put a baseline of like how much one would have to in order to get something like that. And what's crazy is, even when like you look at our family members who did have houses and things like that, it's not like they got them and then things were easy. Like, there are people with terrible mortgages and things that just make it a nightmare to own a home. Can I just build a house and that be it?
Just one.
Can that just be? I wish life was like The Sims, you know?
There are multiple.
You just build it and that's it.
What are they?
Yes. So I'm an ancient Gen Z.
I'm an elder millennial.
So I graduated right into the pandemic. And so I'm part of the Gen Z ones. So those that were, you remember a time in college where you weren't in Zoom, like you were pre-pandemic, you were in the workforce during the pandemic.
Okay, this is me.
And then Gen Z 1.5, it would be where like my little brother is. And so he was in college during the pandemic. And so that shaped both his relationship.
Or maybe that's me.
With institutions and his relationship with digital. And so he got a lot of education via Zoom, and he relied on digital tools, as we all did during that time, to forge friendships and to forge connections. And then Gen Z 2.0 is the people that are in college now and high school now, and they're the first part of that generation that is entirely digital. So for them, like that digital seems to be an extension of reality. But that's how you can think of it, is like the relationship with technology and the relationships to institutions.
When I look at like the college experience that I experienced both before, during, and after the pandemic, because I'm like, I got to experience all of it. That was what was so great. I got to experience normal college life, and then I got to experience isolation college, and then I got to experience life after college. The best part was obviously before the pandemic, where a lot of the issues or a lot of the things that happened on campus was just fairly normal. You didn't really think about a lot of things, and then when you came back, you kind of think about the anxiety of everybody, the uncertain. It's very strange, and I think it changes the way you look at the world. I try to remember what like students were like in terms of like how they thought about the world. It's kind of hard to remember because you weren't like trying to memorize anything, because it's not like you knew what the world was going to be like. But I also like listen to podcasts, and I've been kind of listening to them backwards, and I've gotten to the point where some of them are at the point of like right when the pandemic or shutdowns and everything happened. And it's kind of interesting to hear. It's always interesting to hear how the world was at that time. I think it was Kenneth Copeland. He tried to, he gave a sermon to try and like destroy COVID. Things were crazy. But before that, the prospects of the Gen Z was a lot stronger, because there were so many things happening at one time. And then I think it just halted a lot of the different things in a lot of different ways. So recognizing that, and then I think it's easier to recognize that, but not recognize what it would do for the economy of this generation, right? Because I don't know, I feel like if you think about it simply, it's like a kid thinking they can do anything that they can in the world, and then suddenly not just being told no, but being told like definitely not, and being forced away from things, and then them kind of having to realize there are just some things you're not going to get. And so you kind of change your perspective. What I'm saying is essentially that kid's like sense of innocence or blissful awareness of possibility is gone. And I think that's what happens in simple terms. Because I'm like, there are so many people that I've come to work with who have so many different things, so many different talents. For some reason, these people aren't in the positions or the companies or whatever that they should be in. I don't know. You put a pause on it. So
how does AI fit? My sense of the moment is it's a little bit, for a lot of people, like looking at a wave in the distance. And you turn on the news and they keep telling you have a tsunami warning. And you're like, well, is that wave going to turn into a tsunami? And if so, how quickly? And do I have time to get out? Or am I in a high enough, area? And you don't really know, but that it has become this fog between you and a stable vision of your own future, right? When I started out in journalism, it wasn't clear that I could succeed in journalism, but it was never because there might be a massive technological shock to journalism.
I was about to say, I think that's the way you could look at it. Yeah, it took me a minute to figure out what his analogy was. But yeah, it's like, for me, for film, right, there's always a huge percentage of competition, right? There's always that where you have to be one in a million, right? If you were talking about I want to be on the big screen, cinematic type shit, right? You got to go through a lot of different things, a lot of different, successes and stepping stones, right? So there's always a chance like, okay, yeah, it may not happen, right? It may not happen, or it may happen. It may take 30 years, it may take 5, it may take 2 days, it may take 70 years. Who knows, right? But there's that level of uncertainty, right, that you take on with any job. However, now the uncertainty isn't because of what naturally comes with a job, but it comes with the uncertainty of this technological thing that can just simply do the job. Like there is no competition there. It's just going to be able to do everything instantaneously, so it's a level of uncertainty. It's like, well, where do I fit in that picture? Most people are afraid of that they don't, and that what are they going to do, because this is the thing they've put their time into, right, in all these different areas of work. So I'm like, yeah, it is terrifying when you think about it too much. I don't know. I don't want to live in a world where we have to just maintain these robots. You know what I mean? I heard about that with Amazon. Their hope is to like replace most of their workforce with AI robots. They would need people to work as like basically like technicians to help the robots if something happens or if something falls or whatever. I'm like, that's such a less interesting life when it's just like, oh, a robot dropped a piece of a pillar, let me just go pick it up for it. No one wants those types of jobs, I don't think, because that's even less meaningful than the jobs we were already doing. In a sense, sure, a tsunami in the making, but you're unsure, and by the time you're gonna know, it's gonna be too late.
Yeah, and if you look at the money that the companies are spending, like that can, that's concerning too. When you see like Mark Zuckerberg spending billions of dollars to poach people from OpenAI, it's like, well, clearly something is happening here. Mm-hmm. Clearly he has some sort of plan. Like, will that plan work? Who knows? Because the metaverse didn't work out, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the overwhelming narrative...
that was kind of a slam. Who knows? The metaverse didn't work out, so, like Jesus.
And so I think right now we're at this phase of technology where we're trying to establish the human part of it, and we're not doing a good job at figuring out where humans need to be in the technology equation. And instead we're like, no, we're just going to automate everything. And sorry, we don't have a plan for people.
And I talked to a lot of politicians about this, and they're kind of abstractly worried about it. And none of them have an inkling of a policy answer for it. Like, what do we do if AI, which seems totally possible, just doubles like 18 to 24-year-old unemployment in the next 6 years or triples it? Like, what policy would we deploy for that? And nothing.
Yeah.
The thing is, the reality is you're just going to have to give those people like 18 to 24-year-olds money, because I can see a reality where there are no entry-level jobs and AI does all the work. Okay. So that means people then need time to no longer qualify for entry level, but for whatever is above the associate level, whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, the level into which AI gets integrated into the workforce is part of the problem too, because it's not going to stop at entry-level jobs. It's going to take jobs in all of these different levels. So making it even more difficult, because it's not like if, like, let's say in film, the only thing AI is going to do is book the scheduling. It's not like that's just the limit they're going to take it to. They're going to make the movies for them. So it's like, it doesn't matter if it's entry level or senior level. If the AI can just do it on all levels, they're gonna make it do it on all levels. The problem at that point, you just have to give people money. If we're still gonna live in a society where money is important for people to get things, or you change the economy. We don't run on a money-based economy, but we don't want to do that, huh? They're trying to get rid of pennies. So I mean, it is what it is at this point. The government, they would have to make some type of change that they don't want to make, and just make the hard decisions. I don't want to live in Wall-E.
I'm not surprised to hear that. I don't know if anybody has a good answer. Like, the common answer you'll hear is UBI, like universal basic income, right? And I don't think that's the right answer either, because, like, to be human is to work and to have meaning and to have purpose. And so if we all of a sudden just say, like, no, you don't have meaning and you don't have purpose, like, that feels really bad. And so I worry, if we do have a policy response, like the upheaval, the societal upheaval that could happen if all of a sudden we're like, no jobs for everybody, could be really bad. And then there's the other side of the coin where there's a good paper that was published in the National Bureau of Economic Research that talks about nails, like hammer and nails were once, I think, 0.5% of GDP, like in the 1800s, like the nail part.
Huh.
And so
it's a lot of GDP, actually.
Yeah, right. But like that just shows like technology is always shifting and changing, and like no longer are nails like that big of our economy.
Yeah.
Like we develop new parts of our economy, just like we did with the internet. And so that's kind of what we have to hope for, is that new jobs will be established with AI rather than no jobs at all.
Which maybe they will, but it's that disruption period that is very scary, I think. My old colleague Dylan Matthews, I thought, had a great line on this, which he said that UBI is simultaneously too much and too little of a solution for the AI problem. Because if you imagine you're a unionized truck driver, right? An interstate truck driver, you're making $88,000 a year. And your job is automated by a driverless truck, which we are currently pretty close to being able to do. In fact, maybe already can do it.
I feel like we already can.
And then what? And a UBI in a far-fetched scenario where we actually pass one is going to give you $22,000 a year and also going to give me $22,000 a year. So it's not enough of a solution for you. It didn't replace your income or give you your dignity back. And it's too much solution for me. Like, I didn't lose my job.
Yeah.
Like in
What
France.
if the solution is this? Okay, now this could be interesting, right? Let's say UBI is part of the solution, but people want to work. So you have to keep jobs open for people to work. And that becomes the competitive market for the workforce. Whereas you can live off of UBI, which is, let's say, $22,000 a year. But if you want to make more than that, and let's say have a higher level of income, then you have to put in human work and do human jobs. Whatever those jobs will be, I don't know. But I'm like, maybe something like that where, because again, I'm thinking about that 18 to 24 gap. If let's say there are no entry level jobs, they live off of UBI, right? Which is 22,000, which means it's not a ton of money, but it'll make you get by. This is also assuming the economy is in such a way that that's enough to maintain the cost of living, which currently it isn't. So, I'm like, something like that would be a little bit more understandable, because then it's like not everybody is going to want to just live off of 22,000 a year. Let's say people are going to want to make more money. And that's when you're like, okay, are they going to go and want to put in more work to do something that's more than what this AI can do within this job? And that creates more of a competitive market for people who truly want to work versus people who are okay with the UBI, which I think you're not, like, because that truck driver example is important. Like, if he's making 88,000, he's not going to want to make 22,000 and not have a job, So finding a way to allow that truck driver to, let's say, you can have autonomous trucks for like these simple things, but you need human drivers for, like, let's say, for driving armored vehicles across state lines or whatever. I wouldn't want to rely on autonomous vehicles to just do that. I'd rather there be human forces in that truck driving it, ensuring that it reaches its destination irregardless. And that person gets paid a decent compensation for that job as a truck driver. I'm like, that could make more sense, where the jobs that we can get outside of that UBI baseline are more integral jobs to keeping the world functioning in all these different avenues. And then I'm like, that'll make more sense, right? I think that'll be a better way, but I think that also just requires a lot more changing of the current economic system. I think about it that way because I'm like, yeah, it'd be a better avenue, and gives those 18 to 24-year-olds space to figure out what they want to do, because I don't think you know what you want to do until after 22, 23. Like, you need that you're in that time frame of figuring it out, and in that time frame you figure it out, right? And then after that you hopefully do more.
I think that, going to some of your work on attention, you're going to need a focusing event, and we don't know what it will be yet, where something happens that clicks into place, that this is a problem we need to deal with now, that people are really losing their jobs now. And it's going to depend on how big that event and that trend are. I was talking to somebody who's in this world, and he was a big skeptic that AI was going to take away jobs, even though he's a big believer in AI. And his argument to me was like, look, you're going to have so much capital investment in data centers and all this. We're going to need so many electricians. We're going to meet. And it struck me as very fanciful in this idea that we're going to turn all of these comms majors into electricians really quickly.
Yeah.
So to me, I just haven't heard a solution that really makes sense. And my worry, it's weird to be hoping for much more disruption rather than less, but I think we would have a much better chance of responding to it well if the disruption is significant enough to be undeniable than if it is slow and a lot of little pieces happening kind of all at once, but nobody can quite prove what it's coming from, right? Like my confidence is higher in an almost emergency scenario of this than it is in the accretion that I think we're likely to get.
Yeah, so you'd rather have a flood than a slow drip.
I think so.
Yeah.
Would that be better though? Like if it just all like happens at once? I think if that's the better solution, then I think it kind of sucks in terms of how our government responds to situations. Because it's like, I don't know if it should take like an emergency flood of people losing their jobs for them to come with a solution. You know, I feel like it should be the top priority. So that way, whether we do a slow drip or it just kind of happens, there's always something that's been in development, you know. But maybe in the short term, I would rather it all happen at once, but I wouldn't want it to last that way, you know. And I feel like I would be worried it would last longer than we would want it to. So no.
It's like the hard part of how it's so easy to diagnose problems and it's much harder to come up with solutions, it turns out. I think we are speedrunning it. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see a flood rather than a slow drip just based on the amount of money that's going into it.
And by the way, you could imagine another category of answer to it, right? Which is regulations about how you can and cannot use AI to replace people, and various kinds of protectionism, right? There was a somewhat famous interview from a couple years back between Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro, where Carlson is basically says, trucking is one of the most common jobs for men in most states. Oh, I would absolutely outlaw driverless trucks. And Shapiro's like, you would? And Carlson's like, yeah, like what's wrong with you that you wouldn't? I think debates like that, should we actually welcome this productivity increase or should we stop it, will become much more salient and in a way that people are not yet ready for because they're so used to technology just being adopted as opposed to debated.
Yeah, not all progress is progress. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the rub of it. It's like, because what's also interesting about AI is like, yes, it's being used to replace some jobs, but it's also being used in ways that are spreading misinformation and kind of capturing people. Like people have sent 3 million messages to the AI chicken on Instagram, right? And so you also have to question, like, not
just a hell of a sentence that I don't really understand, to be honest.
Really?
But I mean, I can intuit. I guess there's a chicken that is AI generated on Instagram.
Message it and
what it says, like bok. Like what?
I don't actually know quite how it messages.
Why is there an AI chicken? I don't, you know. But we are at that point now. Getting to the other part of that where, you know, Bryan Cranston spoke out about this and now there are policies for Sora not to use celebrities or anyone without their permission. And they have to be users of the app and things like that. And I'm like, okay, at least, you know, we are trying to put some policies on things like that because it is going to get out of hand. It already is out of hand, but it could get a lot worse, especially as these software gets more and more advanced. The scary part is the misinformation and the ability to do stuff like that, especially in a climate that we are in. But having those policies and those immediate restrictions, I think, can help a little bit, just a little bit though. That's the problem. It's only a little bit. It's not a lot. Now, where it is starting to, where I feel like if it was hard to tell what was AI and what's not, in the past few months, it's starting to get even more. You know, Neil deGrasse Tyson had to do a whole video about an AI video of him talking about flat Earth. It's getting weirder. There's AI actresses and AI. There was a singer. I heard an interview. There's an artist who uses an AI to do her songs she writes them all, and it's based on her experiences, but she uses an AI to do the singing because she can't sing. There was debate about this because a few years ago, the Grammys, they had a policy about I'm gonna fuck this up. They had a policy about basically about people not singing and winning awards for not singing. And now we're in a world where someone can become famous for not singing and not having the actual talent to sing. And it sparked a lot of debate because, you know, people who sing, right, who can actually sing, they spend a lot of time training their vocals, right? It's not an easy thing to do. It's not like they just wake up and can do it. It takes practice. It takes hard work. And when the artist was kind of interviewing and talking about it, she was like, well, we're in the age of AI and this is that and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I feel like this is a line, because it's one thing if you're just making AI music, right? But it's another thing. I think it's not respectful to the artists who spend their lives training their voices to do that, to sing. If you can't sing, you can't sing. I don't know what to tell you. You could get vocal training. So I'm like, it's not a good enough reason. And it just kind of takes away all the work that literally every artist who has ever put in the work to train their vocals and to sing out in front of thousands or hundreds or 20s or 10s or 5s or millions of people using their voice, doing all that. Like, so we're in this age where AI is starting to not only replace these things, but already be famous. It's definitely going to cause a lot of problems and a lot of disruption, because people aren't going to be okay with it. People like to work, but people also like to earn things. So when you take away their ability to actually earn, and when you do it in a way that's in a market such as entertainment where it's already competitive, people are going to fight against it. You know, that AI actress, I forget the fucking Tilly, whatever the fuck the AI actress is, right? That AI actress is getting more attention than whatever actresses or actors are out there right now busting their ass to make a name for themselves. All because they'll never be known, all because they're not AI, you know, but they have worked their entire lives to get to those places or put themselves in those positions. So I'm like, it makes the effort that humans do and the jobs that they do, it makes it feel like it's not worth anything when the work that they do is the value. Actors take themselves to places inside to put on the performances that they do. So it's like, it's not about AI being able to do that immediately or whatever. It's about respecting the fact that humans can do that. They can develop that. It's going to be too much disruption. And there's going to be a lot of like protests. There's already a lot of protests. It's basically going to become worse than Detroit Become Human, to be honest, because Detroit, people are a lot more tame in that game. And in reality, GTA 6 is delayed. So people are upset, you know, and things are only going to get worse. Things are only going to get worse. Mondani, he can only do so much. He can only do
Can't
so
blame me
much.
for trying.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in the optimism, but I think what you were maybe talking about is sort of like dead internet theory almost, like where there is this intellectual flattening of the public, and then maybe people don't come up with new ideas and they don't challenge themselves, and they don't, like, there's, you know, a bunch of articles talking about how the college students are having a tough time because AI is making things a bit too easy. It's a little too frictionless. And I think I worry about that too, like the cognitive effect it could have. Like I notice it in myself, like if I overuse AI in terms of research, which I do use it. Mm-hmm. I notice the lack of sharpening of my own toolkit.
You've written a lot about this world in which
and that's the thing. You know what's funny? Like, okay, for me as a writer, right, I've had to like challenge myself not to use AI in such a way. The only thing I use it for when it comes to my writing now is to I'm developing characters. And so I do all the work where I make these characters. I think about all these things about them, the way they look, how old they are, their family, everything. And I take the basic info of their physical features, throw them in the Sora so I can get a character image of what they would look like based on the information. And that's it. Then I'm like, okay, cool. I have a nice image to put with all this information, and then that's it. And I continue to develop the character with all my questions, and then I write a short story based on that character, and then I put it to the side, right? And to me, I'm like, if this was me maybe 2-3 years ago, I probably would use AI to throw it in and then have it generate a story based on all this information I gave it. But I'm like, no, it's actually way more fulfilling and way more, it feels way better to do it myself, because then I've already gone through the work of answering the questions of what this character is, what they have, what their background is, all these things, and then to kind of come up with the idea of a short story for them. You know, even the fun of it, of like, the short story doesn't need to be perfect, it doesn't need to be short, it doesn't need to be long, it doesn't need to be whatever. It's really just to kind of engage your brain creatively, you know, and see what happens. And there is no right or wrong with it. You know, you just kind of do it. And I'm like, this is way better than how I would have probably got about it 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm like, I think I would rather do it this way. Like, I can't draw. I'm a terrible drawer. So I'm like, that's the only thing I can't do. And I don't want to have to ask someone to spend weeks drawing a face that I don't really need right now. I'm just like, I want to have an image to go along with all this stuff that I wrote. That's it. Every time I finish one of these characters, it's like I feel like I know who this character is. I can imagine who they are. I know when their birthday is. I know what their favorite this is, favorite that is, the things going on in their life, because I've sat down and I've had to like marinate on these things, on the most embarrassing things in their lives or the most successful things. And I'm like, it's been a very fun challenge for me and developing different stories of different genres. And I've been like, this is fun, because I'm like, now I can, for each character, I can challenge myself with going into different genres. I'm like, that's been the funnest part, because it's like, then at least as a beginner, right, you get nervous about trying to tackle a certain genre or whatever it's like, but then you attach it to this character that you know so much about. You can then hop into whatever genre you don't feel confident in, because you know the character. So you're like, let me just see what will happen if I create the situation for them. And then you kind of just let yourself go into it. The only way you get to that point is without using AI to do the core part of that for you. I don't need it to do anything for me in terms of creating this character, aside from that unique thing of just being able to make an image for me. Outside of that, the process was rewarding. I think about that because I'm like, yeah, 2-3 years ago, I would have used it way differently. I feel like I'm better off doing it myself.
You used to need things to kind of like raise money or like move through the world. And now increasingly you can just have attention. And the idea is that attention is increasingly becoming an infrastructure of sorts that people have to build upon. So no longer is the economic foundation something like land, which is very physical, labor, a person, capital, actual money. It's attention, and then narrative. So the story that you tell to gain that attention is the capital that inflates the attention itself. And then increasingly now we have speculation on top of both of those. So speculation is kind of like the operating layer, right? So it operationalizes the attention and makes it move throughout the world, because now you can attach actual dollar signs to how much attention you're gathering.
I think we think of the attentional economics and revolution as being primarily about digital media, but it sounds to me like the way you're describing it, I think this is true, is it's like the weird bastard child of digital media and financialization of everything. That it's the ability to endlessly bet, right? The venture capitalists are betting,
Yes.
The day traders are betting, the crypto people are betting. In a way, when we just give things our time, we are sort of making a bet about what's important.
I get what he's saying. I remember listening to this and I couldn't remember what he was saying here, but I get what they're basically saying is the way the world has shifted is everything is based on what people give their attention to, and you can put a value onto that. So if everybody is watching the Mariah Carey video for Christmas, right, then you know there's value in Mariah Carey singing Christmas. There's value in Christmas if people care about Christmas. It's time to focus on Christmas. You can get some traffic flow if you focus on the Christmas season, because that's what people are focusing on, right? And you notice this basically because this is basically algorithms in a way. It gives you the most popular content for whatever it is you're interested in, which is a problem because it makes you, the idea is to keep you on screen or keep you scrolling. So basically these companies learned how to make money from getting your attention and keeping your attention, and they don't have to get you to like the thing. It's like if I have a store, all these fucking examples. It's like if I have a store, right? And my store could have anything in it, and I don't know what people want. So let's say I put in grapes. Maybe a couple people buy grapes. Okay, cool. So then I take out the grapes and I'm like, all right, let me try apple. And then maybe a little bit more people buy apples. Maybe a lot more people buy apples. And I realize, oh shit, okay, apples. So then we sell apples and we get a huge fan base. And it's like, okay, this has value. People seem to gravitate towards apples. And you kind of go from there and you start to realize you can make money based off of what people value as opposed to what you originally have, if that makes sense. You know, I don't have to sell you a certain thing. I can just find out what it is you like and then sell you the thing that you like, and you'll buy it for whatever the value I can leverage the value at that point because it's the thing that you like. That's pretty much what happens nowadays. It's pretty much how things work. You look up one video on something and you watch it, and next thing you know, you refresh your YouTube page, more things like that video will pop up, or more things from that channel. And at first it's a great thing because it's like, oh, I like this channel, I like their videos, oh, they have more videos. And then you can kind of see how that over time becomes an addiction thing. And it really becomes an addiction thing when you add the scrolling element because of this mechanic of similar to a slot machine. When you're swiping as opposed to pulling a lever, your brain is looking for something, hoping to get the video that's going to be cool, that's going to keep your attention. And when, 90% of it is slop, you're just scrolling past half of it because you don't care. And then you find one that you do, you stop on, you watch it. And then guess what? You get more videos like that because it's like, oh, this is the one that they like. Ultimately, what you get out of all of it is addiction, which is crazy.
It's like that's
it's a whole fucking
the monetization of the attention economy, more or less.
Thing.
But now we're able to bet on where
the consumer gets addiction and the creator gets money because they get paid.
Attention goes. So like influencer, it's a very box situation. Like you have a video that does 1 million views, you make your money, blah, blah, blah. But people can like bet on how much views your video might get. And so that creates this multi-dimensional aspect to the attention economy.
Well, and creates a feedback loop too.
Right.
I mean, polling has always had a bit of this quality, but I really watched with Mamdani and Trump the way the betting markets drive now feedback loops, where people see something happening and then they begin posting more on it, and then the thing begins happening more, and you can see it in the betting market, and so they begin posting more on it or giving more money to it or whatever it might be. And one, it turns attention into capital, right? Because money follows it. And two, it just makes it realer, right? It is a way of something that's starting small can become exponential just through these feedback loops. Again, if it's sufficiently kind of viral and people can keep picking it up. Does your theory of attention as a major infrastructural input, does it say anything about the big parts of the economy that we just don't pay that much attention to, that don't have big narratives around them? Or does that's just sort of not part of this theory?
So there's the physical world and there's the digital world. The attention economy really applies to the digital world. There's elements of attention that can serve the physical world. Like if care workers need a new policy passed around them, like the more attention that they can have on things like that, the better, because that's how you get things done, is a bunch of people talking about it. But yes, the attention economy primarily sits within the digital world, and the physical world, for now, is free of it. But I think what's been really interesting about the Trump presidency is that he's expedited the value of attention.
Tell me about that.
I mean, the guy, he uses Truth Social, his policy platform. Like, we got an announcement about a bombing of Iran via Truth Social. And so I think for him, like, he's able to use this platform that he owns as a way to spread messages and get his point of view out there to move markets, which are quite responsive to him. And so he uses Truth Social just as an extension of the presidency in a way that we've never really seen a president do. Like, we've never had a president who tweets so much, or truths so much, I suppose.
I refuse to use these stupid...
So she's saying that he's essentially using the leverage he has and to move things through the attention that he gets, right? And I mean, yeah. And that's the world we live in, where this is too much. We're just gonna let him cook.
So Trump, yes, he's like very focused on, I guess he's a squirrel, so the next nut or whatever.
Give me your theory of friction.
So basically, the idea of friction is that there is value in things being like a tiny bit difficult. And so when we use digital tools, like there really isn't a lot of friction. Like dating apps, it makes dating very easy. DoorDash makes things coming to your house very easy. So you can kind of have this like frictionless existence. You also have an algorithm that's designed around you. And so you can be served anything within your echo chamber, and you don't ever have to, if you don't want to, kind of think outside of whatever you want to be thinking about. Whereas in the physical world, there's a lot of friction. So if anybody's flown over the summer, it might have been a challenging experience because we don't have enough air traffic controllers. We don't have enough people doing maintenance on the plane. And it's just like little things like that, feel like they should be simpler, and they feel like they should be running smoother, and they're not, because they're not part of the digital universe that gets so much money and investment. And so it's this idea that there's a bunch of friction in the physical world and perhaps not enough in the digital world.
Do you think those things are connected, that there's become so much friction in the real world of building things and accomplishing things, that it's created this like flight to the digital world, that people are overinvested in the digital world because we have done such a bad job managing friction in the real world?
100%. Yeah, I think so. Because in the digital world, it would become an escape at that point from those issues. Like if you're one of those maintenance guys working the planes or whatever. Yeah, it would make sense because like it is a frictionless thing. And I remember reading or listening to like an interview where they were having this debate where it was like, is it a problem that everything is specialized for you, when it's like people don't need the individualization, they need the community. It shouldn't just be about what's best for you, because then that very much limits what you're going to be exposed to, and it creates a false reality of what's happening. And I'm like, yeah, when we started off, everybody thought this like personalized algorithm or showing you what you would most like is great, but you then get put into like this little individual echo chamber of reality of what is and what is falsely out there. I mean, what we need is an engaging of all worlds and in what we see and when we get, which I think only plays into the dead internet theory at this point. When I was doing research for the male OnlyFans model, one of the videos I found, like there was more than one video I found that was like AI made, and I thought this was so weird. I'm like, there can't be this little interviews with OnlyFans male models where there's more AI video. And I'm like, there has to be more out there, but for some reason, the way YouTube is showing me this stuff, because the problem is like YouTube, if you search nowadays, right, it'll show you what you search for. It'll give you some options, and then after a while, it'll just start showing you things that you may want to watch instead that have nothing to do with what you searched for. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm still looking for a video within what I searched. I didn't find anything in these 4 videos. And I'm like, this is a problem with the system in which people find content online, because it's like, if after 5 or 6 videos, you don't click any of those, and then after that, it's just recommended videos that have nothing to do with what you were looking for. That's just a way to kind of distract you and make you have less of an attention span on finding a solution to whatever you're looking for, which is a problem already. People don't find the answer, right? Or if it's more difficult, you just give up on it because it's inconvenient. But I remember when you could search for a while for shit. The way the algorithm, I think nowadays it's changed because now it's like that, but it wasn't like that before. It was a little different, but I'm noticing this on YouTube where it does change. Like even on this recommended below it, right? Below this video, instead of it being either more videos talking about the economy or whatever, it's really just stuff that's recommended. Like why is No Jumper a recommended video under this stuff? It makes no sense. And you get some of those videos, but even then I get mixed in. I get Mr. Who's the Boss mixed in. This algorithm is adapting and trying to keep it balanced, but I don't think it's something we ever needed. It's terrible.
To be online.
It's terrible.
You don't have to like reckon with stuff unless you want to. And so I think you can create this curated experience. Like my boyfriend talks about it all the time. He's like, you can just have this perfect appearance. And like and people write about this too. Like your Instagram page is your best moments ever. And so you can kind of have this life that isn't your life. Whereas in the physical world, you might just be dealing with like headache after headache. Like, how do I pay this bill? How do I make rent this month? How to make sure I'm still succeeding in my job? All of those things.
So for you, there's a connection between friction and meaning, or frictionlessness and meaninglessness.
I think the idea is that when things are a little too easy, it's tough to find meaning in it. Like if the way I think it might be best to visualize it is WALL-E. So like if you're able to
it always comes back to WALL-E. It always comes back to WALL-E. The greatest movie of all time. No matter what conversation it is, it's always coming back to WALL-E. Man, Pixar really cooked on that one. You know, they peaked with WALL-E. They can't do anything more, and I don't know why they try. I think at that point you just stop. Like, you created the future.
Little chair and just have smoothies delivered to you.
It always comes back to
like
WALL-E.
It's tough to find meaning within that kind of WALL-E lifestyle because everything is just a bit too simple. Like the good parts of life often come through the hardest struggles. And I think that is where people do find a lot of meaning. And that's what all the greats, write about, is like the struggle is the path, keep pushing the rock up the hill, more or less. And so I think that's how I think about it, but I don't have data to back that up.
You have a great piece, or I thought it was a great piece, on the Screwtape Letters.
Best book.
Which is, well, why don't you describe what that book is for people who've not heard of it?
Yes. It's one of my favorite books in the whole world. Have you read it?
I have not read it.
Oh, you should. You should really
I
read
will.
it.
Yeah.
It's one of my recommendations for here. But it's this demon called Screwtape, and he's writing these letters to his demon nephew, Wormwood. And it's all about how you demonize this human. So Wormwood has a human within his care, and his whole thing is like to bring him into hell and away from God. And the way that you demonize somebody, like you would think it would make them, you'd kill somebody. Like you would want them to go kill somebody, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's how you would think of it. But it's really just keeping that person stagnant. So all of Screwtape's letters to Wormwood are like, no, just keep him not feeling anything. Keep him in one place. Like don't let him fall in love. Don't let him get passionate. Just keep him baseline, keep him bored. Don't keep him, doing his prayers. Like let him forget all meaning and purpose within his life. And that's when he'll come to us, the demons. And then towards the end, Screwtape gets mad at Wormwood and they eat each other, essentially.
Okay. Spoiler.
Yeah.
A little bit.
It's a good
took a bit of a turn.
Metaphor for kind of how badness moves through the world. Like badness does usually end up eating other forms of badness. Like we kind of, not to call Trump and Musk demons, but like they're infighting now. Like Trump is threatening to deport Musk. And so like bad, not that they're bad actors per se, but like people who are trying to find perhaps bad parts of people are always going to find that in another person, and they turn on each other eventually.
Did you listen to my colleague Russ Douthit's
That's a crazy book. I'm going to have to
Thiel?
check that out. The Screwtape, whatever it was. I'm going to look up Screwtape. I think that'll get me far enough. That was interesting.
I guess from this, Screwtape letters, like if you're going to imagine that the worst thing for society is stagnation, that the true path away from godliness is a kind of decadence, that there's a connection between those two theories.
Yeah. But I would say like the way that C.S. Lewis is writing Screwtape, or at least the way that I interpreted it, was that if you do have people that are, numb to the world around them, it becomes difficult for them to push back. Like if there is, a Palantir takeover or something like that. So I think the two worlds can coexist.
But like when you said at the beginning of this conversation that the thing you hear a lot is nihilism from young people. And the thing in a way that AI feels to me like it pushes is nihilism, right? Is a kind of sense of like, well, if this can do so much of my work for me, like what am I exactly?
Yeah. It's like one of those things that you can feel when you talk to people. Like there is this element of fear and worry And, one thing about the US is we don't really have a social safety net. And so, like, if you do fall because of AI, it's how do you climb your way back up? Who knows? And so I think people are trying to find truth and meaning while having, this technology that's incredibly hypnotic and will get more so hypnotic with things like AI that also might take your job. And so it's a bunch of forces all at once that is perhaps a bit too much for humans. Like, we really haven't evolved that much since we were hunter-gatherers.
There's something in this. You often make the argument that everything feels like crypto now. And that feels relevant somehow here, where crypto has this quality of so much energy and hustle and money and attention, all circling a kind of nothing at the core.
Mm.
And there's this way in which I think a lot of things are developing a little bit of that quality. Like politics sometimes develops that quality. Like, it does really matter. But there is this kind of nihilism people can sense in it. And the economy, right? If you feel like you've put in all this work in your education and your learning, and now the deal you're promised isn't really there,
Mm-hmm.
and we're inventing a computer program that can write your essays and do your learning
Mm-hmm.
and produce the kinds of things we are asking you to produce better than you can. So you're still running really fast. You're still trying to get grades. You're still, trying to achieve the thing. But what is at the core of that, right? If it becomes a little bit less obvious.
Mm-hmm. I think that sort of speculative hollowness, as you've pointed out, does show up in how people are trying to navigate their lives, because it's like, what is next? What does this mean? And I think part of it is this like broken ladder problem, right? So like, you graduate from college, do you get a job? 23% of Harvard MBAs were unemployed 3 months after graduation. Those are the cream of the crop, right? If they can't find jobs, like, that might be tough for you. And you're like, you just see all this data and you're like, oh no, housing, career progression, because people are taking longer and longer to retire. And so I think all of those points can create that feeling of hollowness. Like, what is it all for?
Mm-hmm. What I think will be interesting, to be honest, and I think maybe it'll happen. I don't know in what capacity, but I think it could happen. What I find interesting is that I heard a news report where people are unplugging a little bit more. They're starting to get a little bit of media fatigue, social media fatigue. People are moving more towards using their phones less when they come off of work, or taking those breaks, or noticing those moments where they're like, I need a break, and just deciding to put their phones down. So I'm like, maybe what we are approaching is this possibility where, because we've had a lot of movies and TV shows about what the future may be, about what the future could look like on all different extremes. And we've had all these different lessons through all these different movies, shows, books, songs, poems, whatever, that when we finally reach this age where, let's say, what's a goofy ass example? Let's say we've had Star Wars. So let's say one day we finally invent lightsabers, but we've had Star Wars. So we know not to cut people in half. Maybe one or two people might cut someone in half because they're sick, psychos, whatever. But the majority of us would have taken those lessons and be like, you know what, now that we're in this reality where this seemingly impossible thing is here, maybe we can not do what was in the movies in terms of how the world responds to it. So I'm thinking like, we're right now, one of the biggest dangers, right, is children becoming addicted to social media and whatnot. But I'm like, we are also in a generation who grew up on movies and things like that in pop culture where those lessons are iterated in us. And maybe we'll grow up to want to not have our children be on technology as much, or push harder for them to not become addicted to those things, just because of the things our perspective on these things, from the things that we lived in, experiences, as well as what we've just seen in movies. Like, I wouldn't want my kid to be the next Carrie, right? So I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. and you take steps. So I'm like, what if we enter this phase where society does, where it seems like we're about to hit this crash, but in turn, we actually change. I'm not talking about on a government level, like people still lose jobs, AI still oversets the workforce, whatever. But I'm like, instead of us falling apart as a society, we stand together. Because I'm like, even during this SNAP situation, I heard a lot of different people calling in on the Breakfast Club talk, just kind of talking a lot about helping out each other and giving each other, going to these food banks, helping out, doing what you can. And I'm like, what's interesting is people aren't falling apart. People are not, they're maybe in some areas, but it seems like people are choosing to stand together as opposed to falling into the nihilism. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what if enough of that happens? And I think we're at an age where enough of that can happen, because we're not the generation that's going to the Vietnam War, right? So let's say things like the pandemic, this integration of AI, all these things. This is our version of those moments in life where society has to drastically change. I think, our response is still going to be the same, which is resilience. You overcome those challenges, but I think there is this disruption period. I think it'll happen a couple of times. I think it's already happened a little bit, but I think it'll get a little bit worse, and then maybe it'll get better, and then probably a little bit worse. But I think people are going to choose the better outcome as opposed to the worst outcome every time, in the majority, just because people always want the best for people at the end of the day. Like, society is always going to want the best for itself. And I think when we get to this point where we feel like the government isn't looking out for us, we are going to A, look out for ourselves, and B, change the government, or die trying, I guess, And if we get to the point where people are like, I'll die trying, then we get into I think a civil war situation. But it takes a long time to get there. I think it takes enough people being upset. Right now, people are just trying to hang on. I think when people are past that is when we get to a dangerous part. But I don't think we will get to that point or get past that. I think we'll go from this to recovery. Hopefully. That's always my hope, is recovery as opposed to die trying.
But I wonder if pretty impressive things can't lie on the other side of it, right? If we could get some politicians who understood both sides of it, more business leaders who understood both sides of it. The thing I'll say about OpenAI and Sam Altman, as I said a few minutes ago, and it's true for Elon Musk too. Sam Altman, very, very good with attention, but OpenAI keeps releasing impressive products. Elon Musk, very good with attention, but SpaceX keeps doing impressive things in space. That there is this way in which the future belongs not to the influencers, but to the influencers who can deliver. Mm-hmm. It's maybe not enough to deliver without being an influencer, but it's also not enough to be an influencer without being able to deliver. I think that's my optimistic take.
Yeah, I mean, I think attention is a precursor to power rather than a byproduct now. So it's as you're saying, the more attention that you can raise, narrative is a form of capital, mimetic storytelling is really useful. And then that way you can build all of that around yourself. And then it makes getting into power a bit easier. The way that I think about it is there's extractive speculation and then there's strategic speculation. So extractive would be Trump kind of dragging people from one thing to the next, or, Cluley's marketing campaign, just sort of dragging people along, and then they end up somewhere where they're like, where am I? But strategic would be, your book, which got a lot of attention, got a lot of discourse, reaching Gavin Newsom, right? And that was a really good use of the attention economy. I don't think it was intentional on your all's part, but it was incredible, the amount of discourse. And then now you've changed policy, which is the ultimate goal, right?
I don't want to take too much credit for this. It was hopefully helpful, but
he said
a lot
directly,
of people.
Shout out to Ezra.
Fair, but a lot of people working on this for a long time before
Of course, but you know what I'm saying. But you get what I'm saying,
yeah?
Right? There has to be as you're saying, there has to be an end goal, but you can still use the framework of the attention economy to get people to that end goal, and that's what has to happen. The bones are still important, and I think they're not going away for a bit. But the question will be, where do they go from here? And you have to be able to send them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then always our final question. What are 3 books you'd recommend to the audience?
Yes. So I really like C.S.
Lewis. We always love a few books.
So I'd recommend The Screwtape Letters. And then I'd also recommend The Grief Observed, which is by him also. It's a really nice read on grief, because grief can feel very lonely when you're going through it. Like if you've ever gone through a loss, it's devastating, and you feel like you're the only person that's kind of experienced something so big and heavy, and people are telling you it's going to be fine, and you're like, no, it's not. And he just writes in a way that makes you realize you're not alone in that. And my last book recommendation is Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, which is about this seagull that, everyone's like, you're never going to be able to fly that far. You're never going to be able to do all of this. And he just takes it upon himself to fly. And I won't ruin the ending, but it's this really nice read on the power of people taking a chance, but then what happens when we forget why we took that chance in the first place.
Kyla Scanlon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a beautiful piece. We just went through that entire thing. Holy fuck knuckles. What a ride. 2 hours. 2 fucking years off my life. I do this every time. Now we're going to have to make, this is going to be an amazing edit. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best one to have ever been made. So I like that. I like that we got to see that. I'm glad I got to get some clue into our economy situation. Final thoughts. The economy is fucked. That's my thought. But I think the attention economy is something to look into. I think it's important to understand, because I think as a consumer, understanding that everything is based on attention, on how much attention it can get from you, I think is very important. And if everybody's attention is on short form content or on content that doesn't necessarily provide, I would say, either meaningful or insightful, anything that can like help you improve the quality of life, of your own life or those around you, then I feel you would have to question whether or not it's useful. TikTok, I don't trust TikTok. I've never have. I think she's right. I think Trump is probably the only president who's leveraged the attention economy to their benefit to this degree. And I wonder if presidents in the future will be able to do that better. And I think they will have to. What we've seen in these past 4 years or so, I think we've seen that when politicians decide to get on these platforms, that helps them. And it helps the attention economy and it helps us see decide better what's important. Politics has only been so crazy lately because of social media, because of all these platforms, for people to be able to look at all of it and decide. But the problem is everybody's not looking at all of it. They're looking at personalized content that agrees with them. So when you see something that you don't agree with, it creates this level of discourse that I think is the issue, which is why it's like it shouldn't be personalized. You should be able to see everything that's there, and it shouldn't, I don't want things that are based on my opinion on my platform or on my channel or on my YouTube page. I want things that I subscribe to on top of new things. And I think if we have a problem putting that on there in a healthy way, then maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the problem at the end of the day then. Don't let me be able to subscribe to people. If I don't remember it, then it's too bad. Just keep the entire YouTube platform fresh. It's all based on an attention economy. So I'm gonna have to look this up and go in, because that's social media. But anyway, I think that's it. I think that's it for this episode. My brain is shot. I don't know what we're gonna do next episode. Episode 38. Maybe we'll talk about movies. I don't know. I don't fucking know, man. I don't know, man. But either way, I'm sure it'll be great. Until next time. I'm terrible at saying. Until next, I'm so distracted. Until next time. See you then.